Hi everyone, my name is Claudia Durastanti and I wrote a book called La Straniera, the Fremde. This book came out in Italy 2 years ago and it's the story of my family. It's a meditation on a life, moving from the premise that whether what I tell in this book is true or not, this has not so much to do with my final quest, which is a search for a meaning. The main character in the book is a girl raised in a family of deaf people, and my parents are both deaf migrants, since the women and also the men, but mostly the women in my family did a lot of migrations back and forth from Brooklyn to southern Italy since the 60s, and I always visualized this kind of movement as a movement from the past to the future, until I found out that when my mother moved with me and my brother after a divorce in southern Italy when she was 34, my age, when I started to write this investigation on my family, that the America my family experience was not so much the future, since it was tied to this Italian American community, which was very codified, and it was like an attempt to reproduce in that space, in that place, the laws and rules and features of what they experience in the little town in southern Italy, which is very common for migrants. And then my mom made this very crazy pull move, and I was trying to figure out why she actively searched for the hardest way possible in her life. And I think this had to do with the meaning she gave to her own experience of deafness, but also to her own experience of feeling like a stranger. I call this book La Straniera in Italian, and to me the gender element is very important. So because when I was a little girl and we used to go around, my mother had this loud voice. She had her own syntax and a very peculiar way of talking, and people would say, "Oh, where this woman from? She must be a stranger." And my mom was proud because nobody could really understand that she was deaf at the beginning, and she would, wink at me or push my elbow and say, "Oh, I fooled him again." And I didn't really realize as a little girl what mattered to her in terms of not being recognized as a deaf woman. There are a lot of strategies in terms of identity, what we choose to tell about ourselves, and I learned from a very young age that what is important is the ability to address ourselves in our own terms and not to be victims of labels. So stranger is a beautiful word itself if you recognize yourself as such, but it can be very violent and eradicate you from place and space if somebody else is using this to address it to you. And so my mom, with her rebellion and with her preference of being acknowledged in that specific moment as a stranger, not as a deaf woman, when in other occasions she would move on the deaf part of her identity or the artist part. So it was an interesting blend, and it was surely a lesson for me as a writer and as a woman to see what parts, what strings we pull in certain circumstances and in other circumstances to define what we are and what's our place in the world.